Welcome to my channel. They erased her name, buried her records, and called her a ghost. But when entire squads were pinned down with no way out, one voice cut through the static. This is Ash 9. From the shadows of forgotten wars to the streets where no backup ever comes. She's the guardian no one admits exists. This isn't a story about medals or glory. It's about the sniper who refused to disappear. They say ghosts aren't real. But that night, I became one. The fog was thick over the Narran Ridge. Dense, low, and cold like a second skin, hugging the trees in silence. I lay prone in the soaked underbrush, my breath measured against the wind brushing my cheek. Below me, a SEAL team was pinned in a gully. 8 men, no cover left, low on ammo, and about to be overrun. Static hissed through their comms. Pleas for support went unanswered. The enemy had cut their grid. No overwatch, no birds, no backup. I listened, unmoving, calm, listening for the rhythm of panic, the growing staccato of desperation. I knew it well. I'd heard it once from teammates of my own, the ones who never made it back. Command, this is Bravo 6, came the SEAL leader's voice. We're compromised, surrounded. Extraction is impossible. I could hear it, how he was preparing to die. Then another voice, young and cracked, barely held together. We're abandoned. That word. It always stuck. Not on my watch. My rifle was already prepped. The scope aligned. Humidity 67%. Wind shifting northwest. Slight thermal draft from the valley below. 3 kilometers out, my preferred distance. I spotted the enemy commander, barking orders near a broken banyan tree. He was directing 30-plus hostiles, tightening the noose around the trapped team. They had minutes. Maybe less. I exhaled slowly, felt the breeze, calculated drop, adjusted one click. Then squeezed. The shot cracked like a thunderclap across the ridge. Target down. His head snapped back before he hit the ground. The jungle reacted in chaos. The enemy scattered, shouting. Confused. Their leader gone without warning. I keep my radio. Bravo 6, Overwatch active. Target down. Pick the next. There was silence for a breath. Then disbelief. Who the hell? They never finished the question. My second shot dropped their comms tech. Third, a machine gunner sweeping the right flank. I wasn't there to save them. I was there to tilt the balance. Just enough. 3 down, I whispered. Move now. Windows open. Bravo 6 didn't hesitate. That's why they survive. The good ones trust what they can't see. The enemy panicked. They weren't trained for ghosts. Especially not the kind that struck from impossible ranges and vanished before return fire ever arrived. Who is she? One whispered in shock. I heard it through their open channel. Didn't matter. Names don't survive long in the shadows. But the team made it out. They reached the extraction point I cleared. Not a man lost. The next morning, no one knew how. The mission logs would say enemy disarray, a lucky break. Officially, no Overwatch had ever been deployed. And me? I was back at my bunk before sunrise, rifle cleaned, scope wrapped in cloth, not a trace left. They don't even know I was there. But they'll remember the shot. I sit in the far corner of the mess hall, tucked behind a column that blocks the overhead lights. A place no one looks twice. The other soldiers laugh, trade stories, clink metal trays. I nurse a black coffee. No one talks to me, and I like it that way. They don't see a sniper, just a maintenance grunt. A tag on my chest reads, Kara Mendez, Tech Specialist, Optical Calibration Unit. Paperwork, wrenches, scope alignments. Let them think that. Across the room, Corporal Ritchie, the kind who talks louder than he shoots, slaps a rookie on the back, pointing in my direction. There's the ghost girl, he says with a chuckle. Probably spends her nights spooning a torque wrench. Don't think she's ever touched a real weapon. I let the comment pass. Not because it doesn't sting, because it doesn't matter. I've heard worse. In training, they laughed at me. My size, my silence, my refusal to engage in the bravado that oils military machines. And then one day I hit a moving steel plate at 6 kilometers during a controlled wind simulation. One shot. Everyone stopped laughing for about 5 minutes. Then they found new ways to dismiss it. Fluke. Wind shifted in her favor. Wasn't real pressure. Whatever helps them sleep. But pressure? I know pressure. I've made shots while wounded, while crawling through mud with fractured ribs, with blood dripping from my temple into my dominant eye. You don't learn that in drills. And you don't brag about it, either. That's how you disappear. That's how you survive. After dinner, I return to the armory under the pretense of inspecting optics. The quartermaster lets me in without a glance. I move to the back, where my gear waits in a locked case marked obsolete calibration devices. Inside is not calibration gear. It's precision-tuned, carbon-sleeved, custom-chambered, ballistic-matched optics with a thermal overlay. I call her Anna, the only voice I let myself trust in the dark. I disassemble, clean, and reassemble her with muscle memory so deep it no longer feels like a task. It's a ritual, not just maintenance. Reverence. Each part a prayer. Each motion a memory. Because I wasn't always a ghost. Once I had a name. I had recognition. I had clearance levels that opened vaults. Until Zero's province, 3 years ago. A summit. Bad intel. We were told to eliminate key targets. Turned out the targets were school teachers. Community leaders. I was the designated shooter. They said, fire. I said, negative. They threatened court-martial. I packed up and vanished instead. Now I live off dead clearance and backdoor assignments. The brass knows I'm here. They just pretend they don't. I'm a liability. A problem too skilled to discard. A truth too uncomfortable to report. But when hell opens its jaws and the standard procedures fall apart, guess who they whisper for? They don't use my name anymore. Just my call sign. Ash 9. Sometimes I wonder how many of them would believe the stories they whisper in the barracks if they knew the woman behind them drinks cold coffee and folds her socks by color code. I hear them. The tales of Ash 9. The phantom who hits targets without line of sight, who shows up when extraction is hopeless, who ghosts enemy fire teams from distances that shouldn't be possible. They don't know I hear them. I'm the quiet girl with her head down. Invisible in plain sight. Perfect. Yesterday, a young private asked the quartermaster about me. That girl ever smile? The quartermaster shrugged. Probably not since 2041. But she can spot a cracked lens from across the room and tell you if your rifle's zeroed before you fire a shot. They think that's all I do. Read scopes, log barrel harmonics, write numbers. But the numbers aren't just for maintenance. They're survival equations. Bullet drop at 8 kilometers with 14 kilometers per hour crosswind. I can solve it in 12 seconds. Humidity delta across dense jungle canopies? I've factored it into low-doubt recommendations. Everything becomes math when you've spent enough nights praying your trajectory matches your intent. Back in my quarters, I keep no photos. Just diagrams. Range charts. A folded scrap of paper with coordinates I'll never forget. Zero's province. That mission changed everything. The order came clean. Top down. All channels confirmed. Fire at will. I had 5 targets locked. 5 men shaking hands. But behind them, children. A school award ceremony, not a terrorist summit. Balloons. Painted murals. I didn't pull the trigger. The command didn't forgive me. They wiped my records, marked me as inactive, then issued a memo to quietly reassign me to non-operational roles. They thought that would be the end. It wasn't. Since then, I've surfaced 5 times. Each when a team was boxed in. Each when command said too late. Each when someone needed a ghost more than a plan. They never knew who saved them. But sometimes, they guessed. I remember the first time someone whispered my name on the radio after a confirmed kill. Ash 9, you real? I didn't answer then. But I made the next shot just slightly faster. That's how I speak now. Through velocity and impact. I don't need them to know who I am. I just need them to live. It started with a broken signal, garbled, panicked, echoing off the walls of the comms room like a ghost begging to be heard. Mayday. Grid Delta 16. This is Wolfpack 3. We're surrounded. No air cover. Heavy fire. Repeat. Extraction failed. Then static. I was in the maintenance bay, realigning a scope mount no one else had managed to center. The radio squawked again, this time weaker. The room stayed quiet. Operators froze. Comms officers exchanged helpless looks. Every available QRF unit was out. No one had the clearance to deploy reserves, and the region was considered untenable, which is a sanitized way of saying, we've written you off. Then the commander's voice, controlled, hollow. Wolfpack 3, maintain defensive posture. Reinforcements en route in 3 hours. 3 hours. They wouldn't last 20 minutes. I quietly packed up my kit, walked past the armory guards who barely glanced up, took the long route behind the motor pool, to a locked steel container no one had opened in 2 years. Inside, Anna, my rifle. I hadn't used her since the last unauthorized assist. No one ever traced it back to me, but the whispers grew louder after that one. Ash 9 was real, someone had said in the debrief. And someone else had replied, then why's she gone? But I never left. I just waited. Because I'm not a first option. I'm the call no one wants to make. The one that only gets whispered when everything else fails. By the time I reached the overlook above grid Delta 16, I'd covered 2 kilometers on foot. The enemy had Wolfpack cornered in a collapsed sugar refinery. Rooftops were swarming with gunmen. The team had dug into a half-demolished stairwell, boxed in from 3 sides. The 4th was a wall of steel and debris. No escape. Their radio crackled again. This is Wolfpack 3. We're out of time. If anyone's listening, this is our last broadcast. I opened my scope. Locked onto the enemy spotter, coordinating fire. Wind, 11 kilometers per hour from southeast. Temp, 19 degrees Celsius, dropping. Distance, 2,980 meters. One breath in, one breath out. Trigger squeeze. The spotter dropped. Then the rooftop RPG crew. Then the commander pacing near the stairwell's edge. I switched channels. This is Ash 9. Targets falling. Exit route opening northeast. Go now. Stunned silence. Then the team leader's voice. Hoarse. No way. That name, she's real? I didn't answer. I just kept firing. 7 rounds. 7 threats eliminated. And just enough time bought for 8 men to run through the gap I created. That's how I operate. No announcements. No medals. No confirmation. Just results. They made it back. All 8 of them, covered in soot and blood, adrenaline still lighting their eyes. They stumbled through the gates like they'd emerged from a different world. One where miracles wear steel and hide in trees. I watched from the far end of the motor pool. Out of sight, as always. The medics rushed them straight into trauma triage. I knew most of them wouldn't remember much. Not clearly. Combat fog, shock, and survival instinct. The brain discards details to protect itself. But a few always remember the voice. They talked about it during the unofficial debrief. I only know this because Corporal Dresnik, Wolfpack 3's comms operator, was too rattled to filter his volume. I heard him from outside the room. She said her name. He was telling the others. Ash 9. She sounded so calm. Like she wasn't even trying. One of the younger guys muttered. I thought that was just a story. A grizzled sergeant interrupted. If it was, someone forgot to tell her. Later that night, I saw Dresnik again. Alone. He was walking past the outdoor range, hands in his pockets, face pale and thoughtful. He stopped when he saw me cleaning a training scope on a bench under a lamplight. You ever hear of Ash 9? He asked, like someone trying to poke a sleeping bear, but hoping it didn't notice. I looked up slowly. Why? He hesitated, staring at my face like he was trying to pin something down. I think she saved my life. I said nothing. He nodded once, like he wasn't expecting a real answer anyway. Just, if you ever see her, tell her thanks. He walked off. Didn't look back. They never do. By morning, the official report was locked under restricted access. Enemy positions destabilized. Team extraction successful due to unknown operational factors. Unknown operational factors. That's what they call me. No ribbons. No interviews. No name logged. They can't admit I exist without admitting they discarded me. Without admitting that in the heat of moral compromise, I stood still and refused to burn. But every time I hear that static crackle, every time I hear a voice whisper through the noise begging for help, I answer, even if my name stays off the books. Because this isn't about recognition. It's about responsibility. And I carry mine through a scope. The first time Lieutenant Marin Lockhart really noticed me was during a pre-deployment briefing. She was sharp, new to base, ex-intel turned field officer. The kind who still believed things made sense on paper. Her file said she graduated top of her class. She had the kind of posture that said, I still think the system works. We were in the equipment hall. She was inspecting a batch of rifles that had been flagged for recalibration. I was already halfway through retuning the third one when she stopped beside me, arms crossed. You always this quiet? She asked. Only when I'm busy. She raised an eyebrow at the scope I was adjusting. You're not using the factory sheet. How are you calculating drift? I didn't look up. Elevation delta. 7 millimeters over 600 meters. Barrel memory from overheat on last cycle. Minor warping on the internal brace. She blinked. That's not in the maintenance report. I finally met her gaze. Because the people who filed it don't shoot. She didn't reply. Just watched me finish the zeroing. After that, she started asking more questions. Little things. Once in the mess hall. You ever serve with long-range recon? Later near the armory. You ever see action out near Zeros? I always gave the same answer. Not officially. Then came the day she saw the patch. I hadn't meant for it to slip out from under my sleeve, but it did. Just a flash of charcoal gray, nearly invisible. But she saw the faded triangle, the ghostly silhouette of a bullet encased in flame. She froze. That's Black Tier insignia. I stayed silent. No one's used that sigil since the Echo Purge. I read about it once in redacted files. I shrugged. Must have been a fake. But she stared a moment longer than she should have. Later that night, she found me in the range warehouse. She didn't come close. Just stood by the doorway, quiet. I don't care what your record says, she said softly. You saved Wolfpack 3. I know it was you. I didn't respond. She hesitated. They should have never buried your name. What you did back then. Zeros wasn't your failure. I tightened the last bolt on Anna's rail. My voice stayed even. No, it was my refusal. She nodded slowly, then turned to leave. At the threshold, she paused again. For what it's worth, she said, some of us still believe in ghosts. The kind that show up when no one else will. And then she was gone. She never mentioned it again. But the next week, I found an encrypted range log on my bunk. Inside, satellite overlays, wind grids, recent recon from the Delta Corridor. No note, just a simple label. In case they call again. 3 weeks later, the call came again. This time, it wasn't a jungle ambush or an abandoned ridge. It was a city, a warren of broken streets and flickering power grids known only as Blackridge Sector 9. Urban terrain, no air access, blackout zone. A patrol team, Bravo Echo, had gone dark. 12 operators. Young, some on their first live mission. Command scrambled for options, but satellite feeds were jammed, drones grounded. The team's last message had been garbled. Under fire, no exits, rooftop snipers everywhere. Then, nothing. That night, I was already out. No approval, no dispatch. Just me and Anna, slipping through the edges of the fence perimeter. I reached my nest on the 11th floor of a gutted apartment complex 2 clicks west of the last known ping. The building leaned at a tilt, barely standing, but its view was perfect. I had line of sight on 6 alley exits, 2 courtyards, and the top half of a bell tower where an enemy shooter was nesting. I settled in, unpacked. No panic, no chatter, just the silence I needed. Then the first shot, a flash from the tower. I tracked it instantly. 3 seconds later, the shooter slumped forward. Gone. That was their first warning. By the time I took the second, panic broke across the street radios. Unknown sniper. West Quadrant. Evac teams, hold. Too late. I dropped a rooftop machine gun team next. 2 perfect rounds, spaced by breath. Their weapons spun off the ledge into the dark. Then I spoke. This is Ash 9. Bravo Echo, move southeast. 3 blocks. I'm clearing the corridor. There was a stunned pause on the channel. Then a whisper, barely audible through the firestorm. Is that? Move now, I said. You've got 90 seconds. I started walking the street with precision, 1 shot at a time, each tailored not just to kill, but to manipulate. Take out the flanker? Yes. But hit his radio too. Drop the squad leader? Sure. But hit him mid-command to sow confusion. They fell apart in waves. Their formation shattered like glass. By the time Bravo Echo reached the old rail yard, the enemy had fully withdrawn. I gave no instructions after that. No more shots. My job was done. But before I closed the channel, one voice came through. Young. Shaken. Grateful. Ash 9. Whoever you are, thank you. I didn't answer, but I let one breath crackle into the line. Just enough to say, you're welcome. Then silence again. The kind only ghosts leave behind. Back at base, I returned like always, through the motor bay under darkness, slipping between patrol rotations. No one saw me, but someone must have known. The next morning, something new appeared on the bulletin board outside the comm center. Taped quietly between the shift rosters and weather readouts was a hand-drawn sketch. A long-range rifle with a pair of angel wings folded around it. No caption, no signature, just reverence. People slowed when they saw it. Some stared. Others just nodded once, quietly, like they understood something they'd never say aloud. I passed it that afternoon on the way to optics inspection. Someone had added a single word beneath the image, written in pencil so faint it looked like a whisper. Guardian. No one claimed it. No one took it down. Even the base commander passed it by without a word, his eyes lingering just long enough to tell me he knew. I said nothing. Neither did he. But the mess hall changed after that. Conversations lowered when I entered. Not out of fear, something else. A weight. A respect too quiet for ceremony. Even Sergeant Ritchie, the one who'd once mocked my frame, stopped talking when I passed. He just stirred his coffee and kept his eyes on the table. I still sat alone. Still sipped my coffee black. But the silence around me wasn't the kind that comes from dismissal anymore. It was the kind that follows awe. Later that week, a recruit approached my table. Nervous, eyes darting. "Ma'am," he said, almost a whisper. I think my sister was in that unit you helped." Bravo Echo. I didn't look up from the parts manual in my hands. He swallowed. She said someone saved them. A ghost. She didn't know who. But if it was you. He stopped. Waited. I didn't answer. But I did nod. Barely. He smiled and walked away. That night, a small wooden cross appeared on my pillow. No note. No name. Just a token. A message in silence. I tucked it into the corner of my footlocker, next to Anna and my old patch. Even ghosts, I realized, need reminders they're not alone. I was cleaning Anna when the alert came in. No sirens. Just a coded pulse over a restricted channel, one only a few people still remembered existed. It was brief. Omega strike, operator down. City block Theta 2. Surrounded. QRF unavailable. A kill box. 12 Americans pinned inside a warehouse district. No air cover. No extraction window. I suited up. No questions. By now, I knew the rhythm of these missions. Knew the way desperation breathed across the airwaves. And I knew the math better than anyone. I reached the perimeter within an hour, crouched beneath the skeletal remains of a water tower, high above the smoking ruins of Block Theta 2. My thermals painted the picture. Hostiles closing in from all sides, boxed formation, snipers on rooftops, heavy weapon squads advancing through alleyways. The U.S. team was toast unless something changed immediately. They didn't know I was there until the first shot dropped their rooftop spotter in mid-sweep. Seconds later, the machine gunner nearest the warehouse fell back against a rusted wall. Then the RPG team 2 levels up collapsed where they stood. The comms came alive. Who the hell is? I count 3 gone. What is this? The enemy broke formation. I keyed into the U.S. comms, voice comm, precise. This is Overwatch. Route open. Move northeast. Engage at will. Fire support active. Silence. Then, Overwatch. We don't have a move now. I cut in. 70 seconds. The team responded on instinct. I kept shooting. 15 confirmed. 7 in under 2 minutes. They ran, ducking and returning fire where they could. I guided them with my voice. Left corridor clear. Sniper at red awning, neutralized. Alley north is open. One by one, I cleared the path. When the extraction choppers arrived, the enemy had scattered, their momentum shattered by a threat they couldn't see, couldn't reach, couldn't touch. As the team loaded up, one of them, barely 20 by the sound of him, called into the mic, "Overwatch, who are you?" I didn't answer. Just let the channel go quiet. Let them fill in the blanks. Somewhere below, I saw one of them glance up toward the rooftops, squinting into the darkness. They never saw me, but they always feel it. Sometimes, the chaplain says prayers are answered by people who don't even know they're angels. He said that to me once, after a service I didn't attend. Found me walking perimeter, alone. Some of the families, he'd said softly, don't know who saved their sons. But they're grateful, just the same. I'd answered without stopping. Angels don't carry rifles. He'd smiled faintly. Maybe we've just misunderstood what angels really are. That night, I found another wooden cross. This one etched with the words, "Faith sees in the dark." No signature, just truth. I keep it beside Anna now. Not because I believe in angels, but because someone out there believes in me. 3 years ago, they erased my name. Said I was unstable. Said I'd disobeyed a direct order. Said I was a problem, not a soldier. All because I refused to pull a trigger that would have wiped out innocent lives. Because I chose to save a school instead of following a broken command. They buried my records, scrubbed my face from photos, locked away every medal in some drawer I'll never see. But they couldn't erase what I'd learned. How to measure wind through treetops. How to listen for fear in a soldier's voice. How to make a 3-kilometer shot through mist and fire and chaos. How to save people without ever being seen. Now, they call for me when the radios break down, when protocol fails, when there's no one left to send. And I go, because not every war is won with battalions. Sometimes it's one shot. Sometimes it's the shot you refuse to take. I've never asked for thanks, never told them who I am, never accepted a medal, even unofficially. But the sketch still hangs on the bulletin board, the rifle with wings. And sometimes I see new faces stop in front of it, young ones, one still learning what it means to stand between life and death. They stare at it like it's a myth. And maybe it is, but I'm still here, still watching, still answering when hope runs dry. Ash9 is just a name, but what I stand for, that's real. One breath, one squeeze, one choice at a time. A ghost, yes, but not gone. A guardian with a rifle, a conscience with a trigger, an angel in the dark.